Right, so now we're going to be doing the forearm. Get your horizontal line here set, and for thus far all we've ever used that horizontal line is positioning on the wood to make sure that we had wood for our cut. And you're going to have your center here in your wood, and then you're going to get what I'm referring to as a vertical line. Now what the horizontal and vertical line are used for is to ensure that your hole is going to be straight. Now on this particular one, I could have, because it was so short, I could have drilled it by hand. But what I use then on my drill press, and I have my drill path, and I'm just using, this is a 1/8 drill rod, and what I'm doing with this is it's giving my drill path. I've marked off my drill path. Then I'm going to move this to align to my drill path, so that now then both marks line up to what I'm referring to as this horizontal drill path. All right. Next, what I'll do is I will use this to get my alignment to what I'm referring to as a vertical drill path, so that now then not only is the table positioned this way, but also vertically. And so this gives me again my drill path. I've got my center marked here and here. So now that I know that my table is also positioned correctly vertically. So that's why I'm referring to this as my horizontal, my vertical drill path. And that way then when I drill a hole, it's always going to be straight. There is slight deflection, and by drilling the hole before, now then you're rotating on an axis around your hole. And it should be aligned to the existing. On the forearm, you've got a hole there that you can get for your center, or everything's being cut around that similar axis. One of the things you need to remember when you do this is be sure that you've got your table clamped here, here, and on your oscillation this way. And then also have your piece of wood clamped down before you drill. And that's just to make sure as you clamp, when you clamp this down, when you clamp down your table, it will deviate just a little bit. Now, like I said, on a forearm, there's really not a lot of distance here to cover. More applicable would be where you've got a buttstock. Now, this is a Perazzi, and you're going to be having to drill roughly 18.5 inches. And it does not take much of a deflection here to be off way down here. What you're going to do is you're going to use the same process. You're going to have a horizontal drill path and your vertical drill path, so that when you fix this onto your tabletop, that you get your alignment straight for your drill path. This is starting off as a 7/8, and then all of them have, at some point, they go down to a smaller diameter. And what I did was I standardized on a 23/64 here. This line is representing where your 7/8 stops and the smaller hole of the 23/64 continue. It is absolutely critical that this is aligned to your template stock, so that when you put your rear holder on your template and you put your rear holder on your template stock, this reference point is identical in your hole when you've got this clamped up in your duplicator. This reference point of where this 7/8 hole stops, it's absolutely critical that as is aligned with the stock that you're going to be cutting out, or rather duplicating. This, down here, if it's a little longer, a little shorter, it doesn't matter. It's really from this point back to the rear of the holder for both the template stock and for your blank. Then to get your center for your 23/64, I just turned a piece of wood about 7/8, centered it with my 23/64. At that point, then I drill down, and then I'm centered in my hole. Now these drill bits, so 23/64, it's about 18-inch. Forest City is, I think they went out of business, but you can still get these. These are very expensive. These are about $100 a piece. So when you're drilling down in here, don't overload your drill. There's two things that are going to happen. First, what will happen is the wood will start packing up around here. And what that's going to cause first is it's going to dull out your drill bit. Worse is that your drill bit here will corkscrew. So you don't want to go, but I only go about a ½ an inch. I pull it all out. I recenter it by hand. I drop this down over top of my drill bit so that way I'm visually identifying I'm getting back into my center. And you only want to go at about a ½ an inch at a time. The 7/8 that you're going to finish when you pull this off your tabletop, this 7/8, by the time you come off your tabletop drill press, you're not going to have much of a distance to go. And so there won't be a lot of deflection here. That's a pretty good steel drill bit. And you're going to just go in there. Again, I do the same thing. I drill down about a ½ an inch. I come out and clean out my drill bit, and I keep going back down in here. And then what I did was I turned a piece of, this is just cold rolled, and I just turned a piece of steel to give me my extender so that I can continue on going down. The only other piece of information is the drill that you're going to use. I went to Northern Tool Supply and bought, this is a right angle drill. These are 50, 60. It wasn't cheap, but it was well worth its money. If you've got a handheld drill that can deal that diameter of a drill bit, then you're probably in good shape. You don't need that. This is a low RPM. What it has is a lot of torque, a lot of power, and plus it has a little bit of weight. So again, you're not wanting to force this through. You're going to spin at low RPM, both here and on your 23/64 when you're drilling. And then on your tabletop drill, about 280, roughly 280 RPM, maybe 300. You don't want to go too fast. And you're just going to slowly drill this. And what I do is when I'm drilling this on the tabletop with a 7/8 drill bit, I'm standing with a vacuum. As I pull this out, I'm vacuuming off this debris. Because again, you don't want debris to load up the drill bit. Hopefully that's a tip. I know we digressed here for just a minute, but eventually you're going to be doing a buttstock maybe that has a through hole, and this is how that's done. And then standardized. For example, I standardized, every one of them I use is a 7/8. And then I do a 23/64 for the final hole. And when you start up here, you'll start here, and on this, you'll notice I'm maybe, I don't know, maybe a 1/16 of an inch off, and extra there to play with regards to the through bolt, because the hole here is going to be a little bit larger than the through bolt piece cake. So that's how you're going to drill on buttstocks that have a through hole here like this, and hopefully that's a helpful tip. It's pretty common when you're working with the Forearm. You'll run into this also on a buttstock, particularly if it's a pump or a semi-automatic shotgun, where you're drilling, for example, in this case, you're drilling one diameter of a hole that's a smaller diameter that happens to be for a 13/64. And then on the other end, in this case, we have a nut cap that is a 11/32. And so what you're trying to do is ensure that when you drill from the other direction, that you've centered in that hole for that screw, for the nut cap to align with the screw. Now I went ahead and took the original out, and the way to do that is this will be inserted in here, and on this end you'll take the screw, you'll screw it in, and you'll just slightly tap it out. It should just tap out. If it doesn't do that, stop, and you'll just need to make one. So in order to deal with that, and I've gone ahead and drilled this hole, the way I do that is I will take on my lathe, I'll turn a piece of wood, and this will be the 13/64, and then this will be the diameter of the nut cap, which in this case is about 11/32. Like I said, I've already drilled this out, but what you'll do is you'll set that in. This will be in the smaller diameter, of course. And then what you'll do is you'll drill out, and this will be the 11/32, and you'll just use, I'm just using a glue gun, and I just put a couple dabs of glue here, and you'll set this over top like that, and let that glue set. Then what you'll do is you'll just tap out this from the other end, and at this point now, and of course this would still be stuck to it, I'm just removing that. At this point now, then you have a guide to drill your hole. You can either do that by hand, or you can use a drill press. For me, I like using, on this particular case, I do like using handheld drills for a lot of my drilling, and that ought to get you lined up just fine. To remove this, you don't want to be pulling it off this way. The way to take this off when you've got glue, if you've not done it before, is you're going to twist it. and that'll just pop right off, and then you'll be good to go. And then you'll have your hole centered for your larger diameter coming into the smaller diameter. That ought to get you fixed up. You may have to touch it up a little bit. You want to watch as you're drilling in, even though you've centered here. If the drill's going off at a particular angle, you may have to touch it up here, but you should be fine. That ought get you on the money, and you ought to be good to go. On the forearm, I decided to go ahead and add in a little artwork, and I decided to use some ebony and cut out some diamonds here. Just a note here on this type of work. If you have a bandsaw, that's how I used to do this. I used to use a bandsaw a couple of times when I was cutting it. And what can happen with the bandsaw on this delicate type of work here is that bandsaw, the wood can catch, and it'll pull it in. And when it does that, in goes your finger. I didn't cut anything off, but it was too close for me. I ended all that type of work on a bandsaw, and I bought a scroll saw. Now this is a Craftsman. I happen to be a fan of Craftsman. This is a 12-inch table, 13-inch. I don't remember what the table is. They're not very expensive. What the scroll saw does for you is you can set this at various speeds. You can make it slower, faster, and you can set the speed that's going to work for you for the work that you're going to be doing. It's a very slow cut. It doesn't pull the wood in, and even if it did and your finger came up into this, at least it wouldn't cut it off. And then there's also various different types of little cutters that you can use. Some of these are sanders, some of these are cutters. So lots of different options with the scroll saw. So if you're going to do this type of work, I strongly recommend do not use a bandsaw. Get yourself a scroll saw, use the right tool for the right job. All right, so now we're ready to go ahead and insert these. So as a tip, what I do is you'll get your marking, and then I will use the glue gun, put a couple dabs on this, and then what you'll do is you'll use your knife, and you'll go around the edge and you'll score these lines really good all the way around. As these corners here, you're going to pull away from that corner, and then you'll come around to the other side, and you'll come from the other direction and pull away from that corner. You don't want to try to come over, otherwise you can run over and leave a pretty unsightly gash. You probably get it out of there, but it's just better just to pull away from those edges. And you're wanting to get a really good deep groove on that to score those lines. To remove this, then, once you've completed that, we talked about this earlier, but all you're going to do to take this off, and also you'll notice I marked this so that you'll notice that I've got a position here and left, so that every time you come back, when you start to position this and you start fitting it down in here, that you're always pointed the same direction. Even though these were cut out, there could be a slight variation from one angle to the next. So to take that off, you'll just twist it, and it just pops off, and you just scrape the glue off. All right, so that'll hold it in place for you to score your lines. And at this point, then, you'll use your chisel. And what I would ordinarily do is I'd come back and I'd groove these out even deeper. You want to go as deep as you can and groove those out. But like we did before when we were doing the inletting, what you'll do is you use your chisel, and you're going to pop in to each one of those lines. I'm not ready to do that right now because I haven't scored those out deeper. But what you'll do is you'll use, just like we did that technique, and you'll just chisel in at those angles to pop that out. Then what you'll end up with is this. And so this has been grooved out. The scoring of the lines, you'll notice then while scoring those lines, you get a good, nice, sharp angle on that. And when you're setting this in, another tip here, as you start getting closer and closer, don't force it in. It should just drop in. You may want to sand a little bit on the edges to get this to drop in, but it should just drop in there without too much trouble, and then you can pull that out without too much trouble. That's how you want to do that. To secure these, and like I said, the reason is because if you force it in, if you get impatient and you force this in, as you try to take this back out, you can break off that edge. And if you break the edge, you're kind of, you might be able to fix it, but you don't want to do that. That can ruin the work that you've done. So just take your time, sand off these edges so that drops in and out of there just fine. To fix this in here, all I'll do is you could use the epoxy dye black, or what I like to do is just use the Brownells glass bed
that's black. And the reason why is because on the epoxy what will happen is as it runs over just a little bit, it'll bleed into those pores. And I don't like it. It's harder to sand it out. So I like using the black Brownells glass bed, set that in there, and then you'll have a really nice fit. So that's pretty much on the inletting. To put these in here, when we finish, I'll come back. On the latch, on the latch, you'll get all your settings in here fit. And then on the latch, what you're going to do is I cut this to be maybe 2 or 3 thousandths high. And so for that latch to fit in there, you may need to take your chisel, and you can also do this on this area here when you're doing your inletting. And you're going to use your chisel as a scrape, and you're going to scrape this down to where your latch completes its fit. When you put all your latch and stuff in here and you latch it to the barrel, it should just fit. You'll be tempted, if you're getting in yourself in a little bit of a hurry, you'll be tempted on the latch or on the barrel where the latch hooks into the barrel. You'll probably be tempted to take a metal file and file that in. Don't do it. Just take your time, work the wood down. This will be fixed. This will be your known fixed position, and just move this down, and it goes pretty quick. You're usually probably only 5-10 thousandths off, something like that. You can use the whiteout or a marking agent on the barrel part of the latch, so that as you're putting this in there, you can kind of tell how much further you got to go. It'll go pretty quick, but it does take a little bit of time to get this latch fixed in. All right, so what you're going to do is you're going to encounter situations, particularly on where you've got rolled areas, where you're going to be checkering, and you're going to have to roll over into the other checkering. Real common is going to be on forearms, also rifles. To do that, to get that to work effectively, is to have something for your work to rotate on. So what you're going to do is you're going to have your checkering tool. You're going to get that started in there. And you always want to keep this about 90 degrees. Now I'm going to pull in my elbow. It helps me if I pull in my elbow into my side. And as I come into this, I'm trying to keep everything 90 degrees. You notice now then, I'm just going to let this roll. You're also going to feel this. This is a lot of a feel too. You want to feel the checkering tool. You don't want it to grab. And you're just going to roll this around, and you're going to try to always keep this at 90 degrees. And then when you finish, you're going to come back with your V-file. I use my V-file a lot. And then you're just going to come and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to roll that around, come up to the edge, and sometimes you're going to pull away. But be careful when you pull away. These tips can break, but then just sort of pull away from it. And there you go. All new diamonds, and then you start the line again, and you keep on doing that. So hopefully that's a good tip for you. Okay, so we've finished the project now. So just a look over. Buttstock turned out pretty well. Remember, I changed the grip, so I recast. I didn't want to cut the original trigger guard, so I used the sand casting and used red brass for that, and that's looking really nice. On the forearm, I went ahead and added in some inlay here, some diamonds on the inlay. The checkering I changed just a little bit. Originally I was going to follow the original checkering pattern and have that rounded here and around here, but as I started checkering I changed my mind and decided I thought I liked it better with checkering going all the way through. On the forearm, I also very slightly up here on the front of the forearm, I left that a little bit higher. I thought that gave it kind of a, just caught my eye as being kind of sexy there, the way that kind of came up there. So I left that a little bit higher, and it gave me the look that I was kind of after there. And then on the front bead, I went with a Bradley red bead. That is a 1/8 648. So that's the project, and sort of wraps it up for this project here, and turns out pretty happy with it.